Good morning. I'm Bina Chester, and I'm the Operations and Communications Director of Resilience First, and it gives me my great pleasure to welcome you all to the first of two webinars that Resilience First is organising on this morning, looking at the role technology can play to help the aviation sector adapt or mitigate against the many challenges they face, including the devastating impacts brought about by COVID-19. I would like to start by thanking Intel for partnering with us to deliver these webinars, as well as the Airports Operators Association, ADS, the British Aviation Group, the Chartered Institute of Accounting, England and Wales, and the IET for helping us bring these events together. Before I start, I would just like to say a few words on Resilience First. So we were created just over 2 years ago, and our mission is to advance resilience best practice across urban business communities. We function as a not-for-profit membership organisation, and we have a wide range of companies as champions and members, as well as a host of affiliated organisations as associates. At this particular session, we will be addressing the immediate operational challenges brought about by the pandemic, and I invite the audience to ask questions through the chat box by writing by posting short written questions, and the chair will pick up as many as she can as we progress through the webinar. So, as Albert Einstein had said, the measure of intelligence is the ability to change. And airports are communities of businesses that are subject to a variety of disruption and change that can happen suddenly or be influenced by long-term developments such as climate change. Our webinar chair for the first session is Ellie Wood, Account Manager Transportation from Intel, one of our founding champions. And I will leave Ellie to welcome our excellent speakers. Ellie, the virtual floor is yours. Oh, you're on mute. Sorry.
Sorry. Thanks, Bina, and good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us in the first of two airport webinars we're running this morning. I look after transportation in the UK for Intel, and what a tough year it's been. And now in the thick of COVID still, and seeing the devastating effect it's had on the air industry, we really wanted to look at viable solutions to an industry with depleted funds and that has lost lots of its people and its skills. To look at how technology can help bridge that gap and help control the effects of the pandemic while transforming airport operations, boost customer confidence and make them feel more efficient than before. Most people know Intel as a great silicon chip manufacturer for over 50 years, supporting everything from the edge to the cloud. But we offer so much more to our customers and our partners. For example, we have around 15,000 software engineers dedicated to optimizing and accelerating both mainstream and bespoke applications as they work better on Intel architecture. We create reference designs and have a wide range of technical expertise available to you. We have many hardware and software. We have hardware and software to enhance many technology solutions such as vision, AI, IoT, and 5G. And most importantly, we have a wide range ecosystem of partners that we have worked with to bring you the best market-ready solutions designed end-to-end, tried and tested, ready to solve your business challenges. And that can be anywhere across the airport, whether it's from parking, landside and airside operations, security, retail, air traffic control, business operations, and of course, COVID. So that really brings me nicely onto the speakers today. Firstly, I'm pleased to introduce Sir Stephen Hillier from the Civil Aviation Authority. Sir Stephen, after a long career in the Royal Air Force, where he became Chief of the Air Staff, became Chair of the CAA in August this year. Following on from Sir Stephen, we have three innovations partners. Jaume Portell from Beabloo, Gabrielle Feldman, consultant from ICTS Europe, and Pedro Torres, CEO from Yoonik. So after all speakers have finished, we will take questions to the panel. So please add any questions to chat as they spring to mind. So over to you, Sir Stephen.
Well, Ellie, thank you very much indeed for that introduction, and good morning, everyone. I'm very grateful for this chance to speak at this Resilience First webinar. For me, there's a real sense of symmetry because just over a year ago, I went to my first Resilience First seminar, as it was, back when we could meet live. And the keynote speaker then was Dame Deirdre Hutton, who's my predecessor. And at that stage, neither she nor I knew that a year on, I would be the chair of the Civil Aviation Authority. So I've been chair now for about 3.5 months, and I'm delighted to just have this opportunity to speak to you this morning. In terms of what brought me to the CAA and to become the CAA chair, then you've perhaps seen my biography, so I'm not going to go through that in detail. But in relation to the subjects we're going to discuss this morning, I just mentioned that for probably nearly a decade, I was in the Ministry of Defence of the United Kingdom, and for a very large part of that, I was involved in equipment acquisition, and actually for 4 years, I was directly accountable for the delivery of the Ministry of Defence equipment programme itself, which is about, at that time, was about £170 billion spent over 10 years. The point of mentioning that is that technology and cutting-edge technology and what it might offer is something which is very important in my background and something I'm very interested in, and is one of the things that I bring into my approach to the CAA. In terms of my priorities as chair of the CAA, before we get into the subject of today, my priorities are straightforward. The first one is to ensure that the CAA continues to be regarded as a world-class aerospace regulator, and it has the trust and confidence of all of the stakeholders, be that from government through to the public, internationally, etc. The second priority is to make sure that we are able to adapt to change, and there is a lot of change coming, and there's a lot that we have to deal with in terms of adapting to the COVID environment. More of that very shortly. And the third priority I need to focus in on is ensuring that we have the people with the capabilities, experience and knowledge to deliver against both in the day job, if you like, being that world-class regulator, and in being able to deliver change as well. And we've got some fantastic people working in the Civil Aviation Authority, and it's a real privilege that I feel to be able to be part of the leadership of that great and vital organisation. So let me then start then to talk a little bit about COVID itself. I mean, it's sort of self-evident, but it's the greatest challenge which has ever faced the global aerospace enterprise, and in particular the civil part of the global aerospace enterprise. And what it has starkly demonstrated is our shortcomings in resilience. Now, it's not the first time we've had to deal with resilience issues, but they've been more focused on security before rather than public health issues. And in all of the discussions that we're going to have today, what's very much in my mind is that, yes, we need to deal with the COVID challenge, but we need to build in resilience, which is going to deal with the future challenges, because they will be different. They may be similar, but they will be different. So let's make sure that we don't just deal with the current one, that we can see we prepare for future ones. At the moment, we all know that the civil aviation enterprise is in crisis. We can start to see some things coming into place now, you know, promising news on vaccines and the rollout of that, airport testing, reduction in quarantine periods. All of these things are important pieces, but we should not be under any illusion that we have somehow, you know, solved the problem and we're about to go into the broad sunlit upland. I see them as some pieces for the solution, but there is much, much more to come. So we need to be on our game. Looking into a bit more detail then, those specific COVID challenges, and this is not an exclusive list, but just here are some of the things in my mind, and I'm sure you will have others. But these are specific COVID challenges for aviation as I see them. I mean, the first one is self-evident in many ways, but to a greater extent than many other enterprises affected by COVID, civil aviation relies on bringing large numbers of people together in confined spaces. So it's an obvious thing to say, but it is, you know, something that we need to constantly bear in mind when we're looking at solutions. Second thing I would offer is that passenger security, for very good reason, has been a more prominent issue in the minds of the enterprise than public health. Now, I'm not saying, you know, for over the last few decades. Now, I'm not saying in any way that somehow public health hasn't been an issue. Of course it has. But passenger security has devoted a lot of our effort, and particularly in relation to technology. I think the third thing is the challenges of an international response to the crisis that we're in, and coordinating across nations, with each nation having its varying national priority and restrictions. Self-evidently, again, civil aviation is a highly internationalized business, but we've seen, with some exceptions, more national responses. As a result of all of this, liquidity challenges within the industry, be it airlines, airports, or whatever, leading to quick and sizable workforce reductions. Now that is, a huge concern and, a huge challenge in itself, but it also says something about the recovery, and I'll talk about that shortly. And it also talks to the balance between people and technology. And the final point, again, is passenger trust at the moment, and their confidence in travel is at a very low point. The figure is below 20% of people are saying that they would currently be happy to travel. Now, that's a combination of reasons. It's either concerns about infection, or it's concerns about quarantine, or the whole range of reasons. But nevertheless, we are in a low position. Looking at for the Civil Aviation Authority, then, what are the challenges that we are dealing with in relation to COVID? Well, the first one is continuing to oversee and assist the aerospace enterprise during this crisis. In other words, just doing our day job. And I guess at one level it might be sort of tempting to think that, well, at such a low level of civil aerospace activity at the moment, then somehow things are quieter. Well, far from it. The whole process of trying to ensure that we keep the enterprise going whilst looking at exemptions and alleviations and extensions, being able to do our job of assuring the safety and security and the passenger consumer interests in the midst of a crisis, which obviously, we need to protect our workforce as well. This is a huge issue, but it's our day job, and we are, I think, doing it extremely well. The second thing is assisting government more generally, but particularly in relation to public health requirements. Now, the CEA does not ultimately have the responsibility for public health issues, but clearly because we are so intimately involved across the enterprise, then we have a significant role to play in helping both enforcement, providing advice, etc. Third point is that protecting consumer interest, particularly in relation to passenger refunds, a big issue across certainly the UK at the moment. And we have a consumer rights system which wasn't designed and can't cope with the sort of impact we've seen from COVID. So change is required there. Next point is that we need to prepare for recovery. And the important point here is that, whilst we are in the crisis and there have been huge challenges on the downturn, I'd say not least in terms of workforce reduction and the impact on consumers, in terms of safety, security, and consumer interest risks, they are potentially likely to be greater during the recovery phase rather than during the drawdown. In other words, as the enterprise tries to start and get going again from a very low baseline. And how do we calibrate the release of the pent-up demand from consumers and the ability of the enterprise to service that? Now, I'm not in any way saying that there are uncontrollable risks here. Far from it. We won't allow that to happen. But the mitigation activity is going to be something which is going to keep us all busy. And then the final point is, and the immediate challenges is, well, how do we rebuild passenger confidence? And today's seminar, I think, is a good part of informing how we might achieve that. But as I mentioned right at the start, we need to look beyond just COVID, and we need to look further ahead, because COVID is not the only resilience challenge. If all we do is succeed in having a system which can deal with a future pandemic, then we will miss the other things which could well disrupt us. So how do we prepare for that? The second point is that we, I think, need new definitions of what we mean by reasonable worst case scenario. Because we did model things like pandemics before, but it didn't turn out the way that we expected. So we need to get our thinking caps on for that and what level of resilience we should now aspire to. Third point here is that looking further ahead, change is more possible now. In so many ways, the case for change has been made, and we all know that that is often the greatest challenge, is persuading people that we need to do something different. Well, the case for change is made. So we have a favorable environment, if I can put it that way. And what we've also been reminded of is people's adaptability. I mean, if you look at what has been achieved over the last 7 or 8 months in adapting to this crisis, we can have to, it's been a tragedy in so many ways, but we can also have a degree of confidence and build on that fact that we can change and we can adapt if we need to. So in terms of that change, more innovation, different processes, changed balance between people and technology, I think has all got to be at the front of our mind. Simplifying the passenger experience. I mean, that's part of the reasons why consumers are dissuaded at the moment. It's not just public health, it is just a complex process. How do we simplify that? How do we achieve greater international coordination and coherence? This is a highly internationalized business, but if every nation adopts its own national solution without the ability to connect them together, then we're not going to make as much advance as we need to. And in that respect, when we talk about doing things differently, securing investment is going to be very difficult. The industry is in an extremely difficult position. So coming forth with proposals now to invest heavily, well, the case is going to have to be made very strongly in the face of the financial challenges that every part of the sector is facing and will face for a number of years to come as we recover. And then there's how do we time all of this? We need to sequence it properly. I mean, it would be tempting to think, we hear this phrase of build back better, and absolutely we should look at every opportunity to build back better if we can. But our ability to define what better looks like and how we're going to achieve it is going to be outpaced by the need to recover quickly. And so we shouldn't assume that we've somehow got a blank sheet of paper. As soon as we can, we will get going again with the enterprise, and the technology will then have to be brought in subsequently. And then the final point I just make in relation to this is I would argue that, as a terrible and tragic though this pandemic is in so many respects, the biggest long-term resilience challenge to the aerospace enterprise is actually decarbonisation and net zero. Because at the moment, whilst we can see the prospect of some technologies which will deal with our decarbonisation challenge, the ability to achieve that in a viable way by 2050, well, we don't have that solution yet. And we're going to have one because we must deal with that. So let me just draw to close very shortly. Let me just give a little bit of my philosophy in terms of technology acquisition, as I said earlier, based on a reasonable amount of experience in this way and the customer part of it. My approach is that we, if you like, those who are developing the demand signal here, you can't just rely on us to identify how we want to do that, and then we'll just ask the tech industry somehow to make it. What we are in the business of doing is saying, well, here's the problem we're trying to solve and the environment, the context we're in. We need you, the industry experts, to come up with proposals and potential solutions. So I would very much want to be challenged with possible answers to those problems. And in some ways, even better would be to show me the answer to the problem that I didn't even know I had in the first place. And that's really where technology gets exciting, when somebody says, well, what about this? And you go, well, wow, yeah, that would be fantastic. And the final consideration in technology is that it isn't just about technology. We all know it's going to require changes to business process. And so whilst it can be sometimes easy to identify a technical solution, unless we can make it part of the business process and how people go about their activities, then it will not be effective. So we need to make sure we don't just pursue the technology work stream. We need to make sure that we pursue every work stream. And then finally, what's the CAA's role in technology? Well, point one, we will always protect our independence as a regulator. That is the essence of what we do. But within our responsibility and our powers, I think it's also important that we provide leadership to the sector by creating the right environment in which others can succeed. And that includes through helping enable technological innovation, which is why we have already an innovation hub to ensure that regulation can understand and keep pace and can help shape technological development. And it's an area which I absolutely anticipate in the CEA we will be investing in more, because that's just the environment that we're in at the moment, partly through the public health issues and how we might deal with innovation and use technology there, but indeed across the entire enterprise. So that's my initial perspective. We're going to have a question and answer later on, and very much look forward to engaging with that. But for now, I'll just finish by saying thank you very much indeed for this opportunity. I'm really excited now to be the chair of the Civil Aviation Authority. I really look forward to working with everybody across the sector, and including in technology, to ensure that together we can best deal with the challenges which we have now and the ones in the future. Thank you very much indeed.
Oh, thank you so much, Sir Stephen. It was a fantastic overview, and really appreciate your insights. And now I'd like to move over to Jaume Portell.
Thank you very much. Let me share quickly my screen. There we go. All right. So first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this wonderful event. My presentation would focus very shortly in explaining the different usage of the technology to protect and help the journey in airports nowadays, and how that quickly moved from intelligence to create better spaces to intelligence to protect human beings in airports in their journey to home or in their journey to work. So let's have quickly a look to that. The name of this solution is called Interaction Care, because we try to protect the interaction between human beings. And basically the goal of technology here is to follow the customer in the journey in the airport with information, with intelligence, and with automatic protection. So first element of this is what we can see here at the entrance of this physical space is communication. Communication of the rules of the new game, and is communication to explain human beings moving around that are extremely worried about current circumstances, how they can do the journey in the airport in a safe way. And with this, we've seen that the interest of audience in those locations for messages that talk about security is 300% higher than any other message that we might share with them in digital screens. So one of our elements of our technology sends faces of customers and measure their interest in every single message that we're sharing. We've seen 300% more interest in rules of the game than in any other information. So people needs this, and we are sharing with them in this with this technology. On the other hand, we use technology as well to count people in those physical locations and let everyone know that in that physical context, there's enough space for everyone to walk safely and to keep the distance. And we did this with people counting technology at the door of the physical locations or at the larger spaces like large lobbies, and we count people in and out with zenithal cameras and do what we call occupation care, which is sensing the number of people at any given point of time in real time. Then at the same time, we use those zenithal cameras to measure the distance between human beings, and where there's the distance is too short between those human beings, and we have to redesign the flows to improve that interaction and that safety in that location. So let's have a look to the different use cases. Another one that's also very relevant is the thermal sensing. We use thermal cameras at the entrance of the physical spaces to sense if someone has the wrong level of temperature. We use the same camera to measure if they're wearing a mask. We use the same camera to see if they're actually looking at the content of the screens and paying attention to the messages, so that we understand how we have to design those messages to get them attractive for the audience. So thermal sensing, occupation control, measure how crowded is the space to protect people or to grow their confidence on the way we're managing the airport, mass detection, to warn everyone if they're wearing a mask or not, and activity monitor, it's sensing from the ceiling where the interactions of risk are happening. So let's have a look to the components of those use cases, because they are extremely simple to deploy. We're talking about, in the case of thermal sensing, a thermal sensor at the entrance of the physical locations that's doing, at the same time, audience detection, mass detection, and thermal sensing with real-time alarming. Occupation control, that's counting people with just a zenithal camera at the entrance of the spaces and using signage to inform back to the customers. Mass detection, that's detecting in real time if someone is wearing a mask or not. And if not, showing a message immediately to tell them, please wear your mask, as I'm doing right now. So digital signage with virtual eyes, computer vision, sensing, and triggering alerts to customers when it's important. And finally, activity monitor, that's checking customers from the ceiling and seeing how they move around the physical location, where they stop, for how long, and how safe they are in those physical interactions in the physical location. So that is relevant to redesign the space. That is relevant to understand where the risk is happening. But all these elements that we've seen are extremely relevant to later on create better customer experiences. This type of technology has been used before to create better experiences in all sorts of physical locations, like trains, metros, buses, airports, duty-free stores, where we have been using this technology to analyze if customers are exposed to the fragrance area or to the liquors area, and how much that is improving the conversion of several products. But now it's helping to protect the health of customers passing by the duty-free store or waiting in the lobby of or at the gate. No? These same technologies can be applied to restaurants, to larger shopping centers, and we are happy to share with you that we've deployed this technology to the Istanbul airport, where we've deployed this in digital signage and other open spaces where we're doing mass detection and applying interaction care in several ways. We have had this type of technology deployed in Riyadh Airport for many years, and we are also deploying this in many different places, like universities in several parts of the world. And just for closing, Beabloo is a company designed to help improving the customer experience, that now it's using the intelligence of the technology to help bringing up the health security in physical locations, obviously, including airports. So thank you very much for your attention. Happy to share this presentation later on with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jaume, and fantastic overview. And got your mask on because you're actually in a public place at the moment, not just for the presentation. So appreciate that. So I'd like to move on to Gabrielle.
Hello. I'm going to share my screen now. Okay, so I'm Gabriel Feldman. I am the Chief Innovation Officer at ICTS Europe. For those of you that are not familiar with ICTS, ICTS is a French company specialized in the aviation security sector. Built its reputation for over 30 years, secures over 120 airports globally. 90% of the traffic from the Europe to the US is secured by ICTS. And generally, ICTS is known for its technological orientation beside its security services. So the past for the past 8 to 10 months, we have witnessed from firsthand the crisis in the aviation industry. And although we usually benefit from securing commercial flights, ICTS does not depend on this industry today, and it is resilient enough to not only survive these difficult times, but in fact, ICTS was able to invest resources and build technological solutions that intend to help our partners and the entire industry to accelerate the recovery process from the crisis. So the 4 main challenges we see are missing demand, extensive fixed costs, unclear regulation, and a need to restore that customer trust. To do this, we introduced multiple layers of technology, but our short-term goal was to boost confidence, air traffic, and ensure business continuity, preventing workforce contamination first, then protecting employees and their families, and that is done by monitoring and mitigating the spread. So the first layer of technology we've been using is mobile apps that allow vital sign monitoring through mobiles using the selfie camera found on almost any phone today, that allows measuring specific physiological states using algorithms and flagging the individuals that show clear signs of being sick, but not necessarily COVID specific. These measurements include heart rate, heart variability, respiration rate, and more. And the second layer of defense is a physical device positioned at the entrance of a building or an airport to get much more accurate readings of vital signs. This device uses multiple sensors, including an MLDR laser to identify the biomarks you can see on the screen: pulse anomalies, dry cough, shortness of breath, chills and agitations, and chest palpitations. Then to solve the problem regarding the unclear regulation across countries, we have used TravelDoc, which is a system that we created long before COVID, and pulls travel requirements from all countries. So we only needed to add new sections for health declarations and the validation of COVID tests. Hopefully soon we'll also have the requirements for vaccine certificates. And this is all available through an app that guarantees a traveler that he or she is having everything in place to get to the destination without unexpected disruptions. Then to reduce the need to exchange documents and touch surfaces and stand in queues, we have created an app that allows turning passports into digital tokens. That also includes security features that make sure that the person that holds the physical ID is also the same person using the phone, and eventually producing a digital copy of the document, as you see on the screen. At the airport, those kiosks we all have become used to touch and use can now be upgraded to avoid contact with the screen. In some airports, those kiosks cannot be eliminated through the use of mobile apps, since they print bag tags, allowing travelers to self-drop their luggage. So this kind of technology can be integrated into the existing hardware, and it is secure and fast. Now, moving to COVID tests, there are, in many places, there is still lack of rapid and accurate tests. We know that there's ineffective screening, which is only based on temperature checks, and the diagnosis kits used, they sometimes they're designed so they can miss possible virus mutations. But in generally, the slow results are concerned by high infection rates, meaning people get tested and they get the result too late, so they have already contaminated their environment. So for that, our solution is a pathogens diagnosis device based on proven spectral technology powered by AI. This method uses a saliva test, not that nose swab you already know. And this device is not using the PCR methods we all know. This is ICTS's bet on a technology which is still in certification process, but has the potential to disrupt the testing conventions. It is based on spectral imaging chip, and for those of you wanting more detail, I can elaborate more later. So generally speaking about the process, starting from home, we will allow people to fill the health declarations and get initial vital sign checks from their home using their mobile phone. Then when they step into the airport, they can be tested accurately for symptoms. And for those that test problematically, we would allow a quick COVID test, or even for those that don't have the appropriate tests, they can do it at the airport. Then we provide the self baggage drop services. And from there, it's actually the same security checkpoint we all know, and boarding process, which can be added with a feature based on the same machine at the entrance to provide a manifest for the airline, making sure that everyone on the aircraft is COVID-free up until the moment of boarding. So all of these technologies are part of a concept. It is not active as one piece in any airport to date, but the technologies are being implemented in parts until the entire concept is adopted. You can see some of the examples: Philippines testing using the Travelog alert, India, the off-airport check-ins, Thailand and agent mode check-ins. In Cyprus, we have been using the BagTag system and more. ICTS's technologies are widely deployed around the globe. So for any specific details on this, please contact us. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thanks ever so much, Gabriel. Really useful and an insight to the technology from start to finish that's available. So lastly, I'd like to introduce Pedro.
Hello, everyone. Let me just share my screen. And hopefully everything will smoothly show up in your screen as well. So first of all, thank you very much for the invitation for the webinar. It's a real pleasure to be here, and of course, congratulations on this initiative as well. I think it's very useful, given the situation we're all in, that we can still have panels, talk to each other, discuss situations as we did before, even if virtually. I mean, COVID has had a huge impact on everyone. Nothing new there. It's just the way how we address it and the way we overcome and we try to prepare for the future as well at the same time is what can make the difference. I think that there are two, from my perspective as Yoonik, there are two keywords which are essential on the way we tackle, especially in airports as well, and they are contactless and crowdless. So we can, of course, try to mitigate, try to make sure people are not too close together. But in the first place, if we have efficient ways of them to be processed, that scenario also decreases. So you have more crowdless spaces. So those experiences are key. But at the same time, in my presentation, and the message I want to bring here is that it's not just about COVID. So we need to prepare for the future while, dealing with COVID, and we should not hamper our long-term visions of the world and how we should, or how we can make better experiences for the customers, and just focus on that. We need to make those visions real while solving this problem. So in Yoonik, we started from this question of how much time people spend every day to prove who they are, or to show that they have some token. And because people wait a lot of time in queues to prove all of these different things. When you board a plane, when you check into a hotel, when you pay, you use loyalty cards, or even when you go to the supermarket, there's a lot of experiences that make you waste time, which in fact could be much more efficient. And in total, people over their lives may waste 1 year of time accumulated over their life period of just waiting on this sort of queues or proving something about them. And this has a strong effect also on the businesses behind, those experiences, because the poor experience that they bring, the lack of personalization, and also the risk of impersonation. And if we think about this future vision, how would be the interaction and the customer journeys in all of these verticals and smart cities for the next 10 years, or in 10 years? There'll be experiences we're not prepared to at the moment. We see them coming, but we don't know exactly how they will be. You will be having people reading books as they drive cars, or cars will be like mobile phones with wheels. They have apps. They have all these kinds of interactions you can have. Hotel rooms will have this large, or may have all these large user interfaces. Things will personalized with immersive content. Gyms, outdoor, publicity, transportation will become very, very different. You don't have a ticket to hop on a train. You just hop on the train, and something else behind the scenes will happen that will make sure that you've paid for your journey. And airports, malls, stadiums, and all these big things, big venues where people go for a special purpose, whether it's to buy something, whether it's to watch something, or to travel, they will also become high-tech places which are personalized with content for everyone, for each individual, which may be different, and their interactions will be unique and personalized. Supermarkets and retail in general, you just pick your stuff and you go. You don't have to process anything. Something will be processed behind the scenes. Shopping windows will show you in the clothes that you like from that store, and things like that. So I know this is futuristic. This is future vision for many years. But the thing is, and that's the message I want to bring here, what will enable this, and how can we still see these kind of visions while solving some of the issues today of COVID? And I think one of the key elements, and that's the novelty I'm trying to bring here to the panel, is the ability to authenticate. So face authentication and the ability to be instantly and accurately recognized and prove who you are, or prove that you have some token, is this contactless, is this ability that will allow and enable these experiences while being contactless and crowdless, because it's efficient. So you can register only once and then reuse this authentication in many different verticals and many different applications and use cases, ensuring full privacy of no images being stored, and having a secure digital token associated to that authentication. So this concept, which can be applied to all of these use cases I just gave examples of, can also be very fruitful in an airport context. So the idea is that there's very simple 3 steps where you'll register with a selfie on an app that can check liveness. Then you have this unique ID in our case, or in general other providers for identity. You create this unique digital token, and then you can authenticate in various different places. So if you think about this concept, I mean, it becomes, and all of the future vision I described, it becomes clear that the goal here is to personalize environments while making them contactless and crowdless. So that's the idea of thinking about the future, which is the personalization of intelligent environments, while solving COVID. So while making them contactless and crowdless. And this personalization requires authentication. And in our view, facial authentication is one of the best contactless solutions for bringing that to the market. Authentication also brings together the online worlds and the online and the offline worlds. When you shop online, or when you have online accounts, there's typically one set of worlds, and then it seems like when you go to the physical brick and mortar real smart city, it becomes something different. No, you're actually the same person. You have some preferences, you have some recommendations that make sense in both of the worlds. So the airport should become as digital as possible in connection with the online world, and the authentication part in the smart city, in the Internet of Things, becomes this connection to the online world as well. So I think, just to conclude, my main message here is that the future of touchless experience in airports requires personalization, and that authentication part of it is key in bringing personalization and contactless and crowdless experiences. So I think I'll stop there.
That's great. Thanks ever so much, Pedro, sorry. And as I'm somebody that always loses my tickets, booking forms and everything else, then anything that I can do to get rid of anything paper would be perfect for me. So I'd like to bring everyone back for questions and answers, and appreciate your time. So I guess for me, the first question is, how do airports prioritize what they do first? We talked about a lot of technology. We've talked about the fact that they're, tough on people, tough on funds. In your experience, what's given them the biggest value in return? So, how do they prioritize what they do first? In your thoughts.
So, I mean, can I just sort of start off? I mean, first, Ellie, it's not for me to say here's what airports should do, but a point that I would just emphasize is about looking after consumers and the consumer experience. We know there's a lot of pent-up demand there. We clearly know that airports have had to make significant reductions in their workforce, and we're going to have to carefully calibrate how you balance that out, and the impact doesn't fall on consumers. They have exactly the same rights as they have always had in terms of their safety, their security, their public health, their consumer interests. And if we are properly to rebuild trust and confidence, which I think every speaker has emphasized, and I certainly did, if we're going to regain that trust and confidence, their experience has to be good, and they need to be properly looked after. And that's not just, if you like, somehow the average passenger. That's across the board. We need to make sure that passengers who have particular accessibility needs, for example, they need to be looked after just as well now than before. And I always sort of describe it as there are rising consumer expectations, and I welcome those rising expectations. And our challenge from both the regulator side and also the industry side is how do we recognize that? How do we recognize the bar is continually being set higher, and how do we cross that bar? So I just offer that as a sort of to get the conversation going.
Yeah, absolutely. Any of the innovation partners? You obviously sold to airports. What do you believe?
Yeah, if I can add something there, I think one of the responsibilities of the airports, as any other public space, is to turn on any single feature on the hardware and deployments they already have in place to protect people. So if they do have digital signage screens, make them help everyone understand which are the rules of the game, how they have to protect each other. If you have IP cameras, use software that will help everyone knows if they're wearing properly a mask or not, where and how. So just turn on small little software solutions that will make your already very powerful deployment of hardware in the place smarter. So that basically, because of two reasons, because that reduces investment, but also it brings fast deployment of the solution in place, because deploying technology takes time. It's not only a matter of the money, it takes time. So using everything you have and improving with just software, the intelligence of that location, that is a very good way of approaching this problem, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Agree. Pedro, Gabrielle, anything on that? Or should I go to some of the questions that we have?
Yeah, given that it's I'm not an airport, I would rather go for the next questions where on technology.
Yeah.
And I think most have been said as well. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, understand. So I've got a couple of questions from the chat. So one from Michael Rooney. What is the main lessons for CAA from the pandemic?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's difficult to describe it as a single lesson, and I think it would be appropriate to do that because there have been so many. So I wouldn't pick one out. I touched on a number of them, I think, in my initial presentation, and they range from the immediate tactical is how do you deal with both a rapid drawdown in activity and whilst still ensuring safety in there, to the how do you deal with a rapid acceleration in the enterprise, which will come at some point. So there are key lessons there. Another key lesson would be in relation to consumer interest, which is a vital part of our job. Is that again, I touched on this earlier. We had a previous system, or we have a system, it's still in place at the moment, which never envisaged this sort of challenge. And it's been proven to be inadequate, and that's caused an immense amount of frustration, particularly in relation to areas such as refunds. So there's a big lesson there about we didn't think of enough eventualities and how do we better protect consumer interests in the future. And then the lessons roll out as well into that resilience point is, we were unprepared for an event like this. It was not unimaginable. These things are known to happen, but we rated the probability as low, and we were unprepared, and we didn't have an enterprise which could deal with that. And again, as I mentioned earlier on, when our enterprise essentially relies on bringing large numbers of people together in confined spaces, then I think a little bit of the greater imagination required to look at those future worst case scenarios and ensuring that we are suitably resilient against them whilst maintaining balance. And as a number of presenters have said, is don't just be resilient against future pandemics, because the next thing which will come around the corner will be something else. And if we reflect back nearly 20 years now to 9/11, that was a defining moment and resulted in the security approach that we have now. It will be something else in the future. So how do we ensure that we have the imagination to think about what those future areas be? Now, there are a whole range of other potential lessons, but I say I wouldn't pick out one and say it is the main lesson. There are a number of them. I've just highlighted three, which are particularly in my mind at the moment.
Yeah, and Gabrielle and Stephen, you both mentioned how important international, collaboration is, especially with that end-to-end customer journey. How do we get that collaboration internationally?
I think that this all will, since the situation currently is that the aviation industry is, it is not willing to invest any of its resources until the regulation is clear. So I think that from the moment that airlines and airports are required to comply with a certain requirement, they will have to align in a way that is efficient. Our job is to offer the technological alternatives to adapt to this kind of regulation, and this is what we're trying to do. I think that is the main driver. I don't think that the industry will remain segmented if the regulation is set.
I mean, I think it's fair to sort of underline that organisations like ICAO have been, have played already a significant role in this area in trying to achieve international alignment, and will continue to play a significant role. And the UK has been heavily involved in all of that work. It's somehow easy to say, well, all that should happen is an organisation like ICAO should say, well, this is it, and everybody else therefore aligns around it. But I think we need to be more realistic in that, is that there are a whole range of various stakeholders, various agendas, various approaches, and it's not as if there is just one single obvious solution that everybody would coalesce around. I mean, the world isn't like that. So it's going to be a combination of international organizations providing a framework, nations working together within that framework, industry working within it. There's rules for regulation, but we won't be able to regulate our way. We won't be able to suddenly say, well, here you go, here's the thing, and everybody build around that. It will be like any other challenge global challenge that we face. It's a whole combination of measures which will need to come together. I believe that technology has got a vital part to play in this, because it will offer us potential ways through. And we know in a whole range of other technological areas that it is possible over time to align around interoperable and compatible systems.
Yep. And I think we can just sneak one more into you that came in earlier for yourself, Sir Stephen, which was, you mentioned decarbonisation. In your opinion, how might COVID impact these efforts, both negatively and positively?
Well, I mean, clearly, as I say, it is the huge strategic issue. I mean, we have this challenge of 2050 by being net zero in relation to air travel, and that's a huge challenge. And air travel has, will have a growing reputational, if nothing else, impact to deal with, because as other sectors decarbonize more quickly, automotive, for example, can decarbonize more quickly than aviation can at the moment, then aviation's contribution to global warming will become an ever greater percentage. And so, this is an issue which is going to grow unless we get to grips with it. In terms of COVID's impact on it, well, you could say that, well, there's been some positive impact, because the first thing the airlines looked to was retire their old and inefficient aircraft, 4-engine 747s being an example. Mm-hmm. But in my view, that is, it's almost a happenstance benefit. It's also something we plan to do. It will have a benefit for decarbonisation, but we need to do much, much more than just that. I think in terms of potential other positive benefits is, well, just that realization that the enterprise has fragility. It's been exposed in COVID, and that fragility is going to be ever more emphasized in terms of the use of carbon fuels, and we need to get on and do something about it. In terms of negative impact, well, none of this comes for free. And from governments to industry, money is being consumed at a significant rate, and it gives less freedom for investment, the investment that's needed to put us even more firmly in the path towards decarbonisation. So that's, an obvious potential disbenefit of where we're at the moment. But I come back to, that doesn't mean we've got the luxury of saying, well, we'll just do it when we can afford it. It has to be done. And we need to work out how we're going to do it. And it's going to be a combination of regulation, technological development, investment, demand from people across the world to make this happen, international cooperation. All of those things will need to come together. The final thing I'd just say, in terms of the CEA's role, I don't set out and say, well, the CEA is somehow going to lead the UK's efforts here. It's not that way at all. It's such a broad area, and government clearly has made a lot of measures so far. What I do say, though, is that the CEA needs to have a leading role in this activity. We're working towards that.
Yeah, brilliant. Lovely. Bina, you're on mute. Bina, yeah, you've done an Ellie special.
I just want to say this hour's just elapsed so quickly, and it's been a really thought-provoking and futuristic discussion. We just want to say on behalf of Resilience First and all the participants, thank you so much to all of you for your fabulous contributions, and we will be sharing a short summary of the discussion along with the slides, if you're all okay with that, with all our participants. I hope you can join us again at 11:30 when we have our second session entitled Airports, the Game Changer, where we're going to look at the broader challenges facing the airports with Graham Bolton, the chair of the British Aviation Group. So do join us if you can then, and if you're yet to register for that, do so via our website. But for now, thank you once more and take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.